Dr. Kira Velnash stepped through the airlock and into the human ship. Her crystalline skin glowed with soft blue patterns that showed her nervousness. She had studied human culture for years, but being here was different from reading reports. The ship felt wrong to her senses. It was too warm, too loud, and filled with strange smells. Her people liked clean, quiet spaces where logic ruled everything. This place felt wild and unpredictable. A tall human with dark hair approached her. He wore a blue uniform with gold markings that showed his rank. His face carried scars from old fights, but his eyes looked kind. "Dr. Velnash, welcome aboard the Convergence," he said with a smile. "I'm Commander Marcus Chen. I'll be your guide during your stay with us." Kira's skin patterns shifted to formal greeting colors. "Thank you, Commander. I look forward to studying your culture." Marcus laughed, which made Kira's patterns flicker with confusion. She had said something proper and polite. Why was he laughing? "Studying makes it sound so cold," Marcus said. "You're going to live with us for 6 weeks. You'll eat with us, work with us, maybe even have some fun with us." The word fun did not translate well into Kira's language. Her people did things because they were useful or needed. The idea of doing things just for enjoyment seemed wasteful. "I understand," she said, though she did not. Marcus led her through the ship's corridors. Other humans passed by, and each one nodded or smiled at Marcus. Some even touched his shoulder or arm as they passed. In Kira's culture, casual touching was reserved for mating partners only. These humans seemed to touch each other constantly. "Here's something interesting," Marcus said as they walked. "I want you to meet my family." Kira's patterns brightened with curiosity. She had studied human family units. "Your offspring are aboard this ship?" Marcus laughed again. "Not that kind of family. My crew family. The people I work with, live with, trust with my life." This made no sense to Kira. Family meant genetic relatives who shared resources until offspring reached maturity. How could unrelated individuals become family? They entered a large room filled with tables and chairs. The smell of cooked food filled the air. Many humans sat together, eating and talking loudly. Some argued, but their body language showed no real anger. Others laughed at stories being told. "This is our mess hall," Marcus explained. "Everyone eats together when possible. It builds bonds." A woman with red hair and bright eyes approached them. "Marcus, is this our visitor?" "Sarah, meet Dr. Kira Velnash." "Kira, this is Dr. Sarah Kim, our chief medical officer." Sarah extended her hand toward Kira. This was a human greeting ritual Kira had studied. She carefully took the human's hand and moved it up and down once. Sarah smiled widely. "Welcome to our floating home. Marcus told us you're here to study how we tick." "I am here to observe human social structures and behaviors," Kira said formally. "Same thing," Sarah said with a wink. "You'll fit right in." Kira doubted that very much. Marcus led her to a table where several other humans sat. Each one introduced themselves with smiles and handshakes. They asked questions about her home world and her people. Not formal interview questions, but curious, friendly ones. "What's the weather like on Zephyr?" asked a young man named Tom. "Weather is controlled by atmospheric processors," Kira replied. "Precipitation falls every third-day cycle for exactly 2.7 hours. Temperature varies only 3 degrees across all habitable zones." The humans stared at her in silence. Then someone said, "That sounds efficient." "Very efficient," Kira agreed, not understanding why they looked so strange. As they talked, Kira heard a sound from under the table, a soft, huffing noise like breathing but different. She looked down and froze. A large, furry creature lay beneath Marcus's chair. It had a long snout filled with sharp teeth and powerful muscles under thick brown and black fur. Its eyes were dark and intelligent, watching everything around it. Kira's skin blazed with alarm patterns. Every instinct screamed danger. This was a predator, a hunter. It could kill her easily. The creature lifted its head and looked directly at her. Its lips pulled back slightly, showing more teeth. A low sound came from its throat. Kira jerked backward so fast her chair tipped over. She landed on the floor, her skin flashing bright yellow warning colors. Every human in the room turned to look. Some started to stand up, concerned. Marcus remained calm. He reached down and placed his hand on the creature's head. "Easy, Ranger," he said softly. The creature's expression changed immediately. Its mouth closed, hiding the teeth. Its body relaxed. Marcus looked at Kira, who was still on the floor, her skin pulsing with fear. "He won't bite," Marcus said in a gentle voice. "He knows you're mine." The words confused Kira even more than the creature. Mine? She belonged to no one. And how could this dangerous animal know anything about her relationship with Marcus? But as she watched, the creature called Ranger settled back down. Its eyes never left her, but the threatening posture was gone. It looked calm. Tom helped Kira back to her feet. "Sorry about that," he said. "Should have warned you about Ranger. He's Marcus's dog." Dog? Kira had read about these creatures. Humans kept predators as companions. It made no logical sense. Marcus scratched behind Ranger's ears. The deadly hunter made a sound almost like the purring of her people's pets, but deeper. "He's been with me for 8 years, Marcus said. "Best partner I've ever had." Kira stared at them both. Marcus's hand rested easily on the creature's head. He showed no fear at all, and Ranger seemed to enjoy the touch. "How do you know it will not attack?" Kira asked. Marcus and several other humans smiled. "Because we're pack," Marcus said. "Ranger and I were family, and since you're with me, he'll protect you too." Kira's patterns shifted to confused spirals. Protection from a creature that could easily kill her? Family bonds with different species? None of this fit any logical framework she knew. As the evening continued, she watched Marcus and Ranger interact. The human gave the dog food from his plate. Ranger rested his head on Marcus's foot. When Marcus stood up, Ranger followed. It was not a master and slave relationship. It was something else entirely, something her people had no words for. Later, as Marcus showed her to her quarters, Ranger walked beside them. The dog stayed between Kira and the corridor wall, as if protecting her from threats that did not exist. "Tomorrow I'll show you more of the ship," Marcus said. "And don't worry about Ranger. He really won't hurt you." As her door closed behind her, Kira wondered how Marcus could be so certain, and why, despite her fear, she found herself believing him. Over the next few days, Kira followed Marcus through his daily routine. She carried a small device that recorded everything she saw and heard. Her mission was to understand human behavior and report back to her people. But the more she watched, the less she understood. The first strange thing happened in the ship's engine room. Engineer Lisa Park had been working for 18 hours straight, trying to fix a problem with the power systems. Her eyes were red from tiredness, and her hands shook when she picked up tools. Marcus found her there during what should have been her sleep period. "Lisa, when did you last eat?" he asked. "I'm fine," Lisa said, but her voice was weak. "Just need to finish this calibration." Marcus looked at the work she was doing. Kira's translator told her it was not urgent. The repair could wait until after Lisa rested. "Tom, take over here," Marcus called to another engineer. "Lisa, go eat and sleep. That's an order." Lisa started to argue, but Marcus put his hand on her shoulder. "The ship will run fine for a few more hours. You won't if you collapse." Later, Kira asked Marcus about this. "Why did you waste time on one individual's comfort?" "The work was more important." Marcus stared at her for a long moment. "Lisa isn't just a worker. She's crew. She's family. We take care of family." Kira made notes, but the logic still escaped her. The second strange thing was how the humans treated Ranger. The dog was not just Marcus's companion. Every human on the ship seemed to consider him important. Dr. Sarah Kim checked Ranger's health every week, even though he was not sick. Tom always saved scraps of meat from his meals to give the dog treats. Even the ship's captain, a stern woman named Rodriguez, would stop to pet Ranger when she saw him in the corridors. "Why does everyone care for your animal?" Kira asked Marcus as they watched Tom play a game with Ranger that involved throwing a ball. "He's not just my dog," Marcus said. "He's ship's mascot, crew morale. When people are far from home, scared or sad, Ranger helps them feel better." Kira watched Tom laugh as Ranger brought the ball back to him. The young engineer had looked worried all morning because of a message from home about his sick mother. Now he was smiling. "It makes them feel better to touch your predator?" Kira asked. "He's not a predator when he's with us," Marcus said. "He's family." That word again. Family. Humans seemed to apply it to everyone and everything they cared about. The third strange thing happened when they received bad news from Earth. A terrorist attack had killed many people in a city where several crew members had relatives. Kira expected the humans to become less efficient. Emotional distress always made her people slower and less focused. Instead, something different happened. The crew came together. Those who had lost family members were surrounded by others who brought food, offered to take over their duties, and simply sat with them when they cried. Ensign Williams had lost his brother in the attack. For 3 days, he barely spoke. But other crew members made sure he ate, helped him with his work, and never left him alone for long periods. Kira watched Dr. Kim hold Williams while he cried, even though it served no practical purpose. She watched Tom fix Williams's broken belongings without being asked. She watched Captain Rodriguez change the duty roster so Williams would not have to work alone. "This behavior reduces overall efficiency," Kira pointed out to Marcus. "In the short term, maybe," Marcus said, "but Williams is a good officer. If we help him through this, he'll be stronger than before. He'll know we have his back." That makes the whole crew stronger. Kira struggled to understand this math. How could helping one weak individual make the group stronger? But as the days passed, she saw that Marcus was right. Williams did not just recover, he became more dedicated to his crewmates. He worked harder, not less. He started looking out for others the same way they had looked out for him. During all of this, Ranger seemed to understand what was happening. When Williams was sad, the dog would lie down next to him. When Dr. Kim was tired from helping others, Ranger would rest his head on her feet. The animal somehow knew who needed comfort and when. One evening, Kira was in her quarters making her daily reports when she heard a soft whining sound outside her door. She opened it and found Ranger sitting in the corridor. The dog looked at her with those dark, intelligent eyes. His tail moved slightly when he saw her. "What do you want?" Kira asked. Ranger tilted his head and made a soft sound, not threatening, almost questioning. Against her better judgment, Kira stepped into the corridor. Ranger immediately stood and walked beside her, matching her pace exactly. When they reached the mess hall, many crew members greeted them both. "Look at that," said Tom with a grin. "Ranger's adopted Kira." "What does this mean?" Kira asked. Marcus smiled. "It means he's decided you belong with us. You're part of his pack now." Kira felt a strange sensation in her chest. Her skin patterns shifted to colors she had never displayed before. Soft, warm blues and greens that had no name in her language. The feeling grew stronger over the following days. When she walked through the ship, crew members nodded to her the same way they nodded to Marcus. When she sat in the mess hall, others invited her to join their conversations. When she worked late in her quarters, someone would bring her food without being asked. And Ranger was always nearby. Not following her exactly, but present, as if he was watching over her. The strange thing was that she began to feel safer with the dangerous animal nearby. Her logical mind told her this made no sense, but her emotions, which she had always kept carefully controlled, seemed to disagree. The breaking point came when a delegation from the Centaurian Empire boarded the ship for a brief diplomatic meeting. The Centaurians were proud, aggressive beings who looked down on most other species. During the formal dinner, Ambassador Vex made several rude comments about human customs. He called their emotional bonds primitive and inefficient. Kira felt her skin flush with unexpected anger. Before she could stop herself, she spoke up. "You are wrong," she said to the surprised Centaurian. "Human emotional bonds create strength, not weakness. I have observed this myself." Marcus looked at her with surprise and something that might have been pride. Ambassador Vex sneered. "A Zephyrian defending human irrationality? Your own people are known for logic and order." "I am beginning to think," Kira said carefully, "that my people may have missed something important." After the dinner, Marcus found her on the observation deck, staring out at the stars. Ranger was with her, lying quietly at her feet. "Thank you for defending us tonight," Marcus said. Kira's patterns shifted to embarrassed spirals. "I acted emotionally. It was illogical." "Maybe," Marcus said. "But it felt right, didn't it?" Kira looked down at Ranger. The dog was watching her with calm, protective eyes. Earlier that evening, when Ambassador Vex had stepped too close to her while making an aggressive point, Ranger had quietly moved between them. Nothing threatening, just a gentle repositioning that sent a clear message. "Yes," Kira admitted. "It felt right." Marcus sat down beside her. Ranger shifted so he could keep both of them in sight. "Feeling like you belong somewhere?" Marcus said. "That's not something you can logic your way into. It just happens." Kira thought about the crew members who brought her food, about Tom teaching her card games, about Dr. Kim checking on her health even though Kira was not her patient, about all the small kindnesses that served no practical purpose, but somehow made everything better. "I think," she said slowly, "I am beginning to understand what you mean by family." Marcus smiled. "Good. Because, like it or not, you're stuck with us now." As if he understood the conversation, Ranger made a soft, contented sound and closed his eyes. The attack came without warning. Kira was in the laboratory, studying samples of human DNA, when the ship suddenly shook. Red lights began flashing, and a loud alarm filled the air. Captain Rodriguez's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. "All hands to battle stations. We are under attack by unknown vessels. This is not a drill." Kira's skin immediately shifted to bright yellow patterns of fear. Her people had no experience with space combat. The Zephyrian collective solved disputes through careful negotiation and logical compromise. Violence was almost unknown in her culture. Marcus appeared in the laboratory doorway, already wearing protective armor. Ranger stood beside him, alert and tense. "Kira, I need to get you to the safe room," Marcus said quickly. Before she could respond, the ship shook again, much harder this time. The lights flickered, and Kira heard the terrible sound of metal tearing somewhere in the distance. "What is happening?" Kira asked, her voice high with panic. "Void Raiders," Marcus said grimly. "Pirates. They attack ships and take prisoners to sell as slaves." Kira's patterns flashed brighter. She had heard stories of the Void Raiders. They were a mix of different species who had rejected their homeworlds to live by violence and theft. They showed no mercy to anyone. Marcus led her quickly through the corridors. Other crew members ran past them, carrying weapons and equipment. Everyone moved with purpose, but Kira could see the fear in their faces. Another impact shook the ship. This time, Kira heard the horrible sound of atmosphere escaping through a hole in the hull. Emergency doors slammed shut, sealing off the damaged sections. "They're trying to board us," Marcus said. "We need to move faster." They reached a junction where 3 corridors met. Marcus stopped and touched his communication device. "Rodriguez to Chen," came the captain's voice through static. "Marcus, we have boarders in sections 7 and 12. I need you to help coordinate defenses on deck 4. Marcus looked at Kira, then at the corridor that led to the safe room. It was in the opposite direction from where the captain needed him. "Captain, I'm escorting Dr. Velnash to safety," Marcus replied. "Negative, Chen. We need every officer. Get her to the safe room and report to deck 4 immediately." Kira saw the conflict on Marcus's face, his duty to the ship versus his desire to protect her. "Go," Kira said, surprising herself with her calmness. "I can reach the safe room alone. Help your crew family." Marcus hesitated for a moment, then nodded. He knelt down and spoke to Ranger. "Stay with Kira. Protect." The dog immediately moved to Kira's side. "The safe room is down that corridor, 3rd door on the left," Marcus said quickly. "Lock it from the inside. Don't open it for anyone except me or the captain." Then he was gone, running toward the sounds of battle. Kira started toward the safe room with Ranger beside her. But when they reached the corridor junction, they found their path blocked. Smoke poured from the direction Marcus had sent them, and she could hear the crackle of electrical fires. An explosion somewhere behind them made the decision for her. She turned and ran in the only direction that seemed safe, deeper into the ship's lower levels. Ranger stayed with her, his claws clicking on the metal floor. The dog seemed nervous but not panicked. His ears moved constantly, listening for dangers she could not hear. They descended 2 levels before Kira realized she was completely lost. The lower decks were a maze of storage rooms and maintenance tunnels. She had never been in this part of the ship before. She stopped to catch her breath and tried to contact Marcus on her communication device. Only static answered her. "We need to find another way back," she said to Ranger. The dog tilted his head, listening to something. Then his entire body went tense. A low growl came from his throat. "What is it?" Kira whispered. Then she heard it too. Voices speaking in a harsh language she did not recognize, getting closer. Ranger moved protectively in front of her and growled more loudly. The voices stopped talking. Kira's skin blazed with terror patterns. They had been found. Heavy footsteps approached their location. Kira looked around desperately for somewhere to hide, but the corridor was empty except for closed storage doors. 3 figures appeared at the far end of the hallway. They were raiders, each from a different species, but all carrying weapons and wearing mismatched armor covered in scars and stains. The largest one, a reptilian creature with purple scales, pointed at Kira. "There, Zephyrian, worth good money." The second raider, who looked like he might have once been human before extensive body modifications, grinned with metal teeth. "Pretty one, too. The slave markets will pay extra for her kind." Ranger's growl became a snarl. He positioned himself directly between Kira and the raiders, his lips pulled back to show his teeth. The third raider, an insectoid being with 4 arms, laughed. "What's this? A pet? How cute!" "Kill it," said the reptilian leader. "We only need the female." The modified human raised his weapon, but Ranger suddenly barked. It was not the friendly bark Kira had heard him make while playing with the crew. This was something primal and threatening, a sound that came from thousands of years of evolution, from ancestors who had been wolves. The raiders hesitated. The sound seemed to trigger some deep instinct even in these hardened criminals. "It's just an animal," the reptilian said, but Kira noticed he took a step backward. The insectoid moved to the side, trying to get an angle where he could shoot Ranger without getting too close. But the dog turned to follow his movement, never taking his eyes off the threat. Kira pressed herself against the wall, her skin flashing random patterns of pure terror. She had never felt so helpless in her life. "Grab her," the leader ordered. "I'll handle the animal." The modified human moved forward while the reptilian aimed his weapon at Ranger. But as soon as the human got close enough, Ranger exploded into motion. The dog was faster than Kira had ever imagined possible. He leaped at the human raider, 70 pounds of muscle and determination. His jaws clamped down on the raider's weapon arm, and the gun went flying. The human screamed and tried to shake Ranger off, but the dog held on. Blood began to flow from where Ranger's teeth had found their mark. The reptilian fired his weapon, but the energy blast missed in the confusion of the fight. The insectoid tried to get a clear shot, but Ranger and the human were moving too much. "Get it off me!" the human screamed. Kira watched in amazement and horror. This was not the gentle animal she had come to know. This was a predator, fighting with every ounce of strength he possessed to protect her. But there were 3 raiders and only 1 dog. Even as Ranger fought the human, the insectoid was moving closer with his weapon raised. Then Kira heard something that made her heart skip. The sound of running footsteps, moving fast and getting closer. Marcus's voice echoed down the corridor. "Ranger! Kira! Where are you?" The reptilian leader heard it too. He spun toward the sound, raising his weapon. "More humans coming," he hissed to his companions. "We take the female and go, now." The insectoid lunged toward Kira while his companions were distracted. She tried to run, but there was nowhere to go in the narrow corridor. Rough hands grabbed her arms. Her skin flashed with pain patterns as the raider's claws dug into her crystalline flesh. "Let me go!" she cried out, but her voice sounded small and weak. Ranger heard her cry and released the human he had been fighting. The dog turned toward her attacker, but the reptilian was ready this time. He fired his weapon. The energy blast hit Ranger in the side. The dog yelped in pain and stumbled, but he did not fall. "Kira!" Marcus's voice was much closer now. The insectoid began dragging her toward an open hatch that led to a maintenance tunnel. Once they got her into the ship's hidden passages, Marcus would never find her. Ranger, bleeding and hurt, struggled to his feet. The dog looked at Kira being dragged away, then at the approaching sounds of Marcus running toward them. Kira saw something in the dog's eyes that she would never forget. A choice being made, a decision about what mattered most. Ranger threw back his head and howled. Ranger's howl echoed through the ship's corridors like nothing Kira had ever heard. It was not just a sound of pain or fear. It was a call for help that came from deep in the animal's genetic memory. A sound that said family was in danger. The insectoid raider dragging Kira toward the maintenance hatch stopped for a moment, disturbed by the primitive intensity of the howl. Heavy footsteps pounded closer, much closer. Then Marcus appeared at the end of the corridor. Kira had seen Marcus the diplomat, Marcus the kind crew leader, Marcus the patient teacher. This was someone completely different. His face was cold and focused. He carried a military assault rifle with the ease of someone who had used weapons many times before, but what struck Kira most was his eyes. They burned with a protective fury that was both terrifying and magnificent. Marcus took in the scene instantly. Ranger bleeding on the floor but still trying to get up, Kira being held by the insectoid. The 2 other raiders with weapons pointed at them all. "Let her go," Marcus said. His voice was calm, but there was something underneath it that made even the hardened raiders take a step back. The reptilian leader laughed nervously. "1 human against 3 of us? You should run while you can." Marcus looked at Ranger, who was struggling to stand despite his injury. Something passed between human and dog, an understanding built over years of partnership. "Ranger," Marcus said quietly. "Hunt." The change in the dog was immediate and shocking. Despite his wound, Ranger's entire body language shifted. He was no longer a pet or even a protector. He became what his ancestors had been before humans domesticated them. A pack hunter. A killer. The dog moved like liquid death toward the modified human, who was still nursing his bitten arm. The raider raised his backup weapon, but Ranger was already inside his guard. This time, the dog did not grab and hold. He went for the throat. The human's scream cut off abruptly. At the same moment, Marcus moved. Years of military training took over. He was not just a diplomat who happened to carry a weapon. He was a soldier who had learned to use diplomacy instead of violence whenever possible. The reptilian leader fired at Marcus, but the human was already rolling to the side. Marcus's return shot was perfectly placed. The raider's weapon exploded in his hands, and he collapsed with a cry of pain. That left only the insectoid holding Kira. "Stay back!" the raider screamed, his claws digging deeper into Kira's arms. "I'll kill her!" Marcus froze. Kira could see the calculation in his eyes. The insectoid was using her as a shield. Any shot Marcus took might hit her instead. But Ranger was not limited by the need to use ranged weapons. The dog had finished with the modified human and was already moving. Despite his injury, Ranger circled around behind the insectoid with the silence of a natural predator. The raider was too focused on Marcus to notice the approaching danger. When Ranger attacked, it was with surgical precision. His jaws clamped down on the raider's leg, just hard enough to cause pain and surprise, but not enough to make him accidentally hurt Kira. The insectoid released her with a shriek and tried to turn his weapon toward the dog. Marcus did not hesitate. His shot took the raider in the shoulder, spinning him away from both Kira and Ranger. In seconds, the fight was over. Kira collapsed against the corridor wall, her skin flashing random patterns of shock and relief. She stared at Marcus and Ranger, both of whom had transformed before her eyes into something she had never imagined. Marcus immediately knelt beside Ranger, examining the energy burn on the dog's side. His hands were gentle now, all traces of the deadly soldier gone. "Easy, boy," Marcus murmured. "Let me see how bad it is." Ranger whined softly but held still for the examination. The wound was painful, but not life-threatening. Marcus looked up at Kira. "Are you hurt?" Kira touched the scratches on her arms where the insectoid's claws had dug in. "Minor injuries only," she said. But as she said it, she realized that was not entirely true. Something fundamental had changed inside her. She had watched Marcus and Ranger risk everything to save her, not because it was logical or efficient or served some greater purpose, simply because she mattered to them. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you come for me instead of helping defend the ship?" Marcus looked surprised by the question. "Because you're Pack," he said simply. "Ranger knew you were in trouble. His howl told me where to find you." Kira stared at the wounded dog, who was now sitting calmly despite his injury. "He called you for me?" "Pack takes care of Pack," Marcus said. "Always." Over Marcus's communication device, Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled. "All clear on decks 4 and 7. Raiders are retreating. Marcus, report your status." 3 raiders down on deck 9, Marcus replied. "Dr. Velnash is safe. Ranger is wounded but stable." "Good work. Bring them to medical." As Marcus helped Kira to her feet, she noticed that Ranger immediately moved to her other side. The dog positioned himself so that she could lean on him if needed, even though he was the one who was hurt. They made their way slowly to the medical bay. Other crew members they passed looked at the 3 of them with expressions of relief and respect. Tom stopped to pet Ranger carefully, mindful of his wound. "Good boy," Tom said softly. "Good boy." In medical, Dr. Kim treated Ranger's injury first, despite Kira's protests that her wounds should be examined. "Ranger's hurt worse than you are," Dr. Kim said firmly. "And he's the one who saved you. He gets priority." As Dr. Kim worked, Kira watched Marcus hold the dog steady. There was such tenderness in the way he touched the animal. Such complete trust between them. "I do not understand your bond with him," Kira said finally. Marcus looked up from where he was stroking Ranger's head. "What don't you understand?" "He is not your species. He cannot speak your language. By all logic, you should have nothing in common." "Logic isn't everything," Marcus said. Ranger and I, we chose each other. We trust each other. We protect each other. That's deeper than species or language." Dr. Kim finished treating Ranger's wound and turned to examine Kira's scratches. As she cleaned and bandaged the cuts, Kira thought about what she had witnessed. The raiders had been 3 trained killers with advanced weapons. Marcus and Ranger had been outnumbered and outgunned. By any logical analysis, the raiders should have won, but they had not understood what they were fighting. Not just a human and a dog, but a bonded pair. A team that had trained together, fought together, and would die together if necessary. The raiders had thought they were facing 2 separate opponents. Instead, they had faced something much more dangerous. They had faced a family. "Dr. Velnash," Dr. Kim said gently, "you're shaking." Kira looked down at her hands. She was indeed trembling, and her skin was cycling through colors she could not control. "Shock," Dr. Kim diagnosed. "Perfectly normal after what you've been through." But Kira knew it was more than shock. It was the overwhelming realization that everything she thought she knew about strength and survival was wrong. Her people survived through logic and careful planning. They avoided conflicts and negotiated solutions to problems. It was a good system that had kept the Zephyrian collective stable for thousands of years. But it was not the only way to be strong. Marcus and Ranger had shown her a different kind of strength. The strength that came from absolute loyalty, from knowing that someone would risk everything for you, and that you would do the same for them. As Dr. Kim finished her treatment, Ranger limped over and lay down next to Kira's bed. The dog rested his head on his paws and watched her with those dark, intelligent eyes. "Thank you," Kira whispered to him. Ranger's tail moved slightly. Just once. But Kira understood. Marcus sat down in a chair between them. "The captain says the raiders took some equipment but no prisoners. Everyone is accounted for." "Good," Kira said. Then, after a moment, "Marcus, when Ranger howled, how did you know what it meant?" Marcus smiled. "After 8 years together, I know all his voices. That howl meant pack in danger, come now. It's the same call wolves use to summon the rest of their pack when hunting dangerous prey." Kira thought about this. "So he was calling you to hunt the raiders?" "No," Marcus said softly. "He was calling me to help him protect his family." For the first time since the attack, Kira felt completely safe. Not just because the danger was over, but because she finally understood what it meant to belong somewhere. She was part of a pack now. And pack took care of pack, always. 3 weeks after the raider attack, Kira sat in her quarters trying to write her final report to the Zephyrian collective. Her mission was almost complete, and soon she would return to her home world. But every time she started typing, she stopped. How could she explain what she had learned? Her people expected scientific observations about human weaknesses and strengths. They wanted to know if humans would make good allies or dangerous enemies. The truth was more complicated than either option. Her door chimed softly. "Come in," she called. Marcus entered, followed by Ranger. The dog had recovered completely from his wound and showed no lasting effects from the fight. "How's the report coming?" Marcus asked. "It is difficult," Kira admitted. Marcus sat down in the chair across from her desk. Ranger immediately went to Kira and rested his head on her knee. Over the past weeks, this had become their routine. Kira had stopped being surprised by how much comfort the contact brought her. "What's difficult about it?" Marcus asked. Kira's skin shifted to frustrated orange patterns. "My superiors expect me to categorize human behavior, to put it into logical frameworks they can understand. But your emotional bonds do not fit into any framework my people have." She gestured at her notes scattered across the desk. "How do I explain that a human will risk his life for a non-related individual? How do I quantify the tactical advantage of having warriors who trust each other completely?" How do I describe the strategic value of loyalty that cannot be bought or forced? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Maybe you don't categorize it. Maybe you just tell them what you saw. That is the problem, Kira said. What I saw changes everything my people believe about survival and strength. She stood up and walked to the window that looked out at the stars. Ranger followed her, staying close. The Zephyrian Collective has existed for thousands of years without war, without violence, without the chaos that emotional bonds create. We have peace through logic, order through careful planning, safety through avoiding unnecessary risks. Marcus joined her at the window. That sounds like a good system. It is a good system, Kira agreed, but it is not the only good system. She touched the glass with one hand while petting Ranger with the other. Your species has something we lost long ago. You have the ability to be stronger together than you are alone. Not just through cooperation, but through love. The word felt strange in her mouth. Her language had a term for mating bonds, but nothing that captured what she had witnessed between the crew members. When the raiders attacked, she continued, logic said you should have let them take me. I was not essential to ship operations. Saving me put you and others at risk. But you came anyway. Of course we came, Marcus said simply. Your family. Kira's patterns shifted to soft blues and greens. Even now, the casual way he said it amazed her. That is what I mean, she said. You saved me not because it was logical, but because I mattered to you. And that made you stronger than the raiders, even though they had superior numbers and weapons. Over the past weeks, she had thought about this constantly. The raiders had been experienced fighters, but they fought only for themselves. When things went wrong, each one tried to save himself. Marcus and Ranger fought as one mind in two bodies. They were willing to die for each other, which paradoxically made them much harder to kill. My people need to understand this, Kira said finally. Not just about humans, but about themselves. We have become so focused on individual survival that we have forgotten the strength that comes from truly caring about others. Marcus looked at her with surprise. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Kira turned away from the window to face him. Her decision had been building for days, but saying it out loud was still difficult. I am requesting to remain as a permanent liaison between our species, not just to study you, but to learn from you. And perhaps to teach my people what I have learned. Marcus smiled broadly. The crew will be happy to hear that, especially Ranger. As if he understood his name, the dog wagged his tail and made a soft sound of contentment. But, Kira continued, I must warn you that this will change me. I cannot unlearn what I have discovered here. I cannot go back to being the logical, detached observer I was when I arrived. Is that a bad thing? Marcus asked. Kira considered this seriously. I do not know. The Zephyrian Council may not approve of the changes in me. They may decide that human influence is dangerous to our social order. And if they do, then I will have to choose between my people and my pack. The words hung in the air between them. Kira had not intended to say it so directly, but there it was. The truth she had been avoiding. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Whatever happens, you'll always have a place here. Ranger pressed closer against her legs, as if he too was offering reassurance. Thank you, Kira said softly. That evening, Kira submitted 2 reports. The first was her official scientific analysis for the Zephyrian Collective. It recommended close alliance with humanity and warned that humans would be formidable enemies if treated badly. She described their military capabilities, their technology, and their political systems in careful, logical terms. The second report was personal. She sent it directly to the Council of Elders, the leaders of her people. In this report, she wrote about pack bonds and chosen family. She described how humans cared for each other in ways that made them stronger, not weaker. She explained that emotional connections could be a source of power, not just vulnerability. Most importantly, she wrote about her own transformation, how being cared for had made her more willing to care for others, how feeling protected had made her braver, not more dependent, how belonging to something larger than herself had given her life new meaning. 2 weeks later, she received a response from the council. Some elders were alarmed by her reports. They worried that human emotional bonds were a form of psychological manipulation that had affected her judgment. They wanted her to return immediately for evaluation and possible treatment. But other elders were curious. They had read between the lines of her scientific report and understood that humans represented something unprecedented. A species that had found a way to balance individual strength with collective loyalty. The council's decision was a compromise. Kira could remain as a liaison, but only if she agreed to regular evaluations and promised to maintain her objectivity. Kira read the message twice, then deleted it. She walked to her window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere among them was her home world, where her people lived their careful, logical lives. They were good people who had built a peaceful society through thousands of years of careful planning. But they were not her only people anymore. Marcus found her there an hour later, with Ranger at her side as always. "What did the council say?" he asked. "They want me to remain objective," Kira said, "to study humans without being influenced by human emotions." Marcus nodded. "And what did you tell them?" Kira looked down at Ranger, who was watching her with those intelligent eyes. Then she looked at Marcus, who had risked everything to save her from the raiders. "I told them it was too late for that," she said. "I told them I was already influenced, changed, improved." She paused, then added, "I told them I had found something more valuable than objectivity. I had found a family." Marcus smiled. "And how did they take that?" "Some were angry, some were concerned, but some were interested." Kira's skin shifted to determined patterns. "Change is difficult for my people, but it is not impossible. I think with time they will come to understand what I have learned here." "And if they don't?" Kira looked around the room that had become her home. She thought about the crew members who had become her family. She thought about the dog who had protected her with his life. "Then I will help them understand," she said firmly. "Pack takes care of Pack, Marcus. Always. That includes helping them see that they can be part of something larger, too." Marcus laughed. "You sound more human every day." "No," Kira corrected him gently. "I sound like myself. For the first time in my life, I sound like who I really am." As if to agree with her, Ranger made a soft sound and settled down for another evening with his expanded pack. Outside the window, the stars shone with quiet light. Among them, 2 very different species were learning that the strongest bonds were not chains that held you back, but connections that helped you become more than you ever thought possible. And in her quarters aboard the Convergence, Dr. Kira Velnash finished her personal log with words that would have shocked her former self. "Today I learned that home is not a place you come from. Home is the people who will fight for you when you are in danger, comfort you when you are sad, and celebrate with you when you are happy. Home is Pack, and I have found mine." The entry was signed not with her formal title, but simply, "Kira, friend to Marcus, protected by Ranger, member of the crew family of the Convergence." It was, she thought, the most logical conclusion she had ever reached.